let's see how we can work effectively with Python dictionaries. There are many different ways to create a dictionary. We'll learn about all of those different options that you may have. And similarly, you can loop over dictionaries in a few different ways. And lastly, we will cover ways that you can interact with a dictionary that doesn't get you into the dreaded key error exception that might get you into trouble when you're trying to process a lot of data. Now, be mindful on these techniques, know where to apply them. I'll add some notes while we're going through the content, and all of these will allow you to work very well with Python dictionaries as you're trying to deal with data. Let's start by creating Python dictionaries. There are a couple of different ways that you can do that. So we will be using these Jupyter notebooks, and we will get started here running some blocks. So there are unfortunately different ways to create dictionaries, and we'll take a look at all of those here. But usually one of the most common ways is to define a variable and assign some curly brackets. Curly brackets are what Python dictionaries will use to give some representation of what they are, like a visual cue of what they are. So here we can say contact information equals, and we can say curly brackets. So that will define or assign this empty dictionary to this contact information variable. So if we were to say contact information later, this would basically say that this is a dictionary. You can see right here it's outputting a dictionary. So contact information is just a variable, and this is just one way that you can create a dictionary. In this case, it's empty. Now, similarly, you can also create a dictionary with preceded data. So sometimes you may already have some sort of data that you want to create your dictionary with, and in that case we could do contact underscore information, and you can say, for example, a name, and in this case we're going to do colon means assign this value to this key. In this case the key is name. I'm going to say the key, the value for this key is Alfredo, so that's my first name. We can say last name is another key, and colon again, and we're gonna say that that's my last name, Deza. So I'm separating these two things with a comma. So you have the curly brackets, several different things happening here. You have the curly brackets, you have the keys, in this case are strings. We have name and we have last name as well, and those are the keys. And remember, dictionaries are a mapping of keys and values. So keys are, there are two keys here, name and last name, and the values are Alfredo, which is the value for name, and the last name is Tesa. So if we were to, again, retrieve the information for these, it would represent that very neatly for us. Now, that is with preceded data. Now we're going to do that with the dict built in. So this built in is a, you can treat it as a function, and what you can do here, you can say contact information. So now I'm going to create a new one that is empty, right? So I'm going to do that, and that's the same way you can try and run it, and it creates an empty dictionary for you. So that's certainly possible that you may want to do something like that, and will be effectively the same. So here you have an empty dictionary at the end. So now you have three. You have one with the curly brackets, which is very, very common. Now with some preceded information where information is using curly brackets, a comma, and a colon. And the other one is with the dict built-in, which is a function, I think, beneath behind the curtains. So all right, so next you have a dict and a list of tuple pairs. So how does that work? Well, you can, if you have a list with tuples, remember the tuples are parentheses. So let's say, for example, we can say data, and this is going to be a list, right? So tuples are defined by parentheses. So we can say name, comma, Alfredo, and then that's one tuple, and then we're going to do the next, can say last name, comma. I'm going to say this. I'm going to use lowercase here to make it easier. So that's the data. So it's a one list with 2 items, and each item is a tuple with 2 items each. It's a key and a value. Now, this is not that common, but sometimes when you have data that is coming in pairs and you put it in a list, you can use dict to produce a dictionary. So let's do that. So again, this is not a very common way to do this. So, but again, if you have a list with tuples or you have tuples already, there are pairs, you can definitely create a dictionary on the fly with that data as input to dict. Now, a very neat way, although not very common again, is by using dict directly with keyword arguments. What are keyword arguments? Well, there are arguments that have a key and a value, and we can use dict to do exactly that. So we can say, in this case, we don't need strings. We need to write the keywords, the arguments, and we're going to do first, I'm going to say Alfredo, and then, oops, I'm going to say that, and then we can say last name equals this, just like that. So if I run this, that will very well work again. Now, one caveat with this approach is that you can do things that are not valid Python. So if you have a space, then this won't work. So if I had last name like this, that wouldn't work, right? So that is one of the caveats of doing that. So there you go. You have several different methods to create a dictionary, 5 all in all. And that will give you some flexibility to try and create some dictionaries. Now let's see how we can add data to a dictionary. Now, you've already seen that you can precede data on a dictionary. We did that with the contact information already. But we haven't seen how to add a new key and value. So if the dictionary is empty, or if we just want to add a key and value, we can say contact information, and we're going to use square brackets. I know this doesn't look straightforward, but that's how we reference these to insert the key. So we're going to assign a value to it. So in this case, we can say first, following our example of contact information, and we can assign that to Alfredo. So this is no longer using the curly brackets, it's using the square brackets, so that it retrieves that value, it knows what it is, and then it's going to assign the value of Alfredo. So it retrieves the first key and then assigns that. So if we do that, we can call this contact information and run it again. Well, we're gonna start this very quickly, and then we're going to run the new key and value, and perfect, it has added that. So that is how you add a new key and value. Now you may want to add a value to an existing key, or even replace it. Well, this is fairly straightforward as well. You only need to do the same operation. So contact information, and we can say first, we can say it's no longer Alfredo, it's someone named John, and we can ask what the variable information is, and we can run this again, and now it has replaced the value of the same key. So that's it, how you add data to a dictionary. So you have these methods where you are looking first for the key, and then you're adding a value. Now this can be for a key that doesn't exist, and you're creating this key at the same time that you're assigning the value, or you could be replacing an existing key with some other value. Now let's loop over dictionaries. There are different ways to loop over dictionaries depending on the data that you want to get. So we are going to cover 3 methods, one to retrieve only the keys, another one to retrieve only the values, and the last one to retrieve both keys and values. So first I'm going to start by creating this dictionary As you can see, I'm using one of the methods that we've seen to create a dictionary with preceded data. So again, we're following the same example of contact information. I have my name and last name, age, height, and we're going to use this information. I'm using a mix of strings and floats and integers to try to retrieve various different information. And we're going to use the square brackets here. I'm going to say, what is the name? So these should provide the value, right? Now we want to loop, not necessarily extract here, and that's fine. And retrieving only the keys by default. So this is done explicitly, and I'm not looping here. I'm just retrieving the value for the name key. Now, if I want to loop over the keys, I can do for key. Now the key word is a variable, so this will become a variable, and you can assign anything there, but I'm just going to use key as a reference. For key in contact information, I'm going to do print key. So you can see here that now I have that variable there. I'm going to run this. I'm going to run, and I didn't use anything special here, and you can see that it looped and it produced only the keys. So you have name, last name, age, and height. We have name, last name, age, and height here as well in this cell up or before the cell that we're working on. And that is one way of retrieving only the keys by default. Now, that's done by default. You don't need to do anything different. However, there is this other way. We're gonna copy this loop over here, and there's this other way. I'm gonna comment this out. Now, for key in contact information, that keys is a method of the dictionary object. So if we run this, it will produce the same result. Now you might be surprised. It's just the default behavior for contact information when looping, without explicitly saying what you're trying to loop over, it will be key. But if you want to be explicit, then you would use if you want to be explicit, you want to use dot keys. That's perfectly fine there as well. All right, so now what if you want to retrieve the values? Where you can do for value in contact information that values. So you would need to access this special method called values in the contact underscore information object, and you would do print value. And again, I'm just using value here, and that's the name of the variable, and I'm going to use that, and you can see it's going to do the values of all of the keys before. So I'm going to have Alfredo days of 49 and 1.9 as the result of printing over the values. Perfect. So last but definitely not least is what we're going to do when retrieving both keys and values. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to say for key comma value. This means we're going to produce two variables out of looping over the dictionary contact information. So the key here is that we need to do dot items. That items is the right thing that we need to do there, and contact information dot items, and then we can say print, and we can use here an F string, which will allow us to use key like this, and that will get replaced. And we can say a small arrow just to try to be nice, and we can say value like that, and then we can try to run that. Now I'm missing a keyword here, that's why I'm getting the red curly underline. So let's go over this one, because it's the one that has more things in it. So we're saying for key value in contact information that items print key value. So what I'm doing is I'm saying I'm starting the loop with a for keyword, and then I'm saying, hey, I'm gonna get one variable name key, another variable name that I'm naming value for every single item in contact information, which is going to be produced with items. So I'm going to run this, and here you go. You're going to have key and value for each item. Now, if you're interested, this is how it would look if you were to do contact underscore information that items. That would produce this strange looking items object that is effectively a list with the tuples that we've already seen before. So that's it. Those are the ways how you retrieve values from looping dictionaries. Now, the most common problem when retrieving data with dictionaries is that, yes, you can get a key error. So when you get a key error, that's an exception. It's the exception name key error. It can be kind of annoying, especially if you just want to keep moving and don't want to deal specifically with that exception. Now, I'll show you a couple of things that you can do, but a word of warning, you should only ignore an exception if you're prepared to really not deal with the consequences. If you really need to report an error, you shouldn't be ignoring the exceptions in this way. And I'm going to run this, and I'm going to initialize that variable, so it's an empty dictionary. Now we are going to do a normal retrieval of a value of, like, I'm going to see, please give me the value of a key. So we're going to say contact underscore information. I'm going to retrieve the value address, and let's see what happens. Again, I'm using the square brackets here, so we'll see what happens. If I run this, yes, I'm going to get a key error. So that's how you would try to retrieve something that doesn't exist yet in the dictionary, and you will get this key error. Now, if address were to exist, then this wouldn't happen. All right, so one possible way to try to address this normal retrieval of information is that we can do a try except block. So how would that work? Well, in the case of a try except block, you can either ignore the exception or do a fallback that you can use in case the exception happens. So let's see if we can say try contact information address. So that's going to produce a key error, right? So we're going to catch it. I'm going to say accept key error, and we're going to do we're going to say in this case, if this was a function, you would do a return clause here, but we're not going to do a return. We're going to say print. I'm going to say Main Street, like that, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to run these, and I'm getting Main Street. So what you're doing is basically you're entering this try except block, you're catching the key error, and this is definitely going to generate a key error because it doesn't exist. So then you're dealing with that, and you're doing something else. But perhaps most probable thing is you won't do a print statement. You will do something else. You will perform some operation on the dictionary. You will manipulate data, return, all kinds of different things. But this is one way of extracting information and trying to do something else if you get into a key error. Now, another thing that I really like, another method, is using .get. Now, if you use .get, you can do several things. So we're going to say here contact information once again, and we're going to do .get, and I'm going to say I want to get the address. Give me the address. Let's see what happens when I run these. If I run these, nothing happens. Now, this is a surprising thing in Jupyter Notebooks, but let's print out the result of these, and let's see what happens. Yes, so we get a none, right? Nothing gets there by default. So this .get call is like saying when there's a key error, return a none over there, right? So it's effectively the same thing behind the scenes. Now you get that that behavior by default, you get a none. But you can also specify something different. You can say contact information that get address, and this optionally accepts a second argument, and that second argument is the fallback value. So you can say, instead of a none, that by default is a none, you can say Main Street. So now if I run this, you'll see that, well, first it gets a none because I printed out the address that doesn't exist, and next I printed it produced Main Street, the string Main Street, because I'm specifying here, hey, if that doesn't exist, produce this other value that in this case is Main Street. So that's it. That is how you retrieve data trying to deal with exceptions, or a way that doesn't produce any exceptions at all, which is the .get method on the Python dictionary.